Captain Ji-hoon Park stared at the massive structure floating in the darkness of space. His ship, the New Seoul, was tiny compared to the ancient station that orbited the dying red star. The thing was huge, almost the size of a small moon, and it looked like nothing he had ever seen before. "Sir, I'm getting some very strange readings," said Mirako, his chief engineer. She was bent over her console, her dark hair falling across her face as she studied the data. "This station is old, really old, but parts of it are still running." Ji-hoon walked over to look at her screen. Numbers and symbols scrolled past, but he didn't need to understand all of them to know something was wrong. Or maybe something was right, depending on how you looked at it. "How old are we talking?" he asked. "At least 400 years, maybe more. But Captain, look at this." Mira pointed to a section of her readout. "There's still power running through the main core. Whoever built this thing, they built it to last." Salmon Lee, the ship's expert on alien cultures, looked up from her own station. "I've never seen architecture like this. It doesn't match any known species in our databases. The design is too smooth, too organic. Most alien builders use straight lines and sharp angles, but this looks almost grown rather than built." Ji-hoon nodded slowly. In his 10 years as a captain, he had seen a lot of strange things in deep space. But this felt different. The station wasn't sending out any signals, wasn't trying to communicate or warn them away. It just sat there in the red light of the dying star, waiting. "Take us closer," he ordered. "But keep our weapons ready and shields up. I don't like surprises." As the New Seoul moved toward the station, more details became visible. The hull was dark gray with streaks of silver, and there were no obvious weapons or docking bays. But as they got within a few kilometers, something changed. Lights began to appear along the station's surface. They started small, like distant stars, but quickly grew brighter and more numerous. Within minutes, entire sections of the station were glowing with soft blue light. "Captain," said Yunahan from the communications console, "I'm picking up a signal. It's not on any frequency I recognize, but the computer is trying to translate it." "Put it through," Ji-hoon said. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then cleared. When the voice came through, it was unlike anything any of them had ever heard. It was clearly artificial, but there was something almost musical about it, like a computer trying to sing. "Unknown vessel," the voice said in perfect Korean. "I am Area 7, guardian of this station. I have been waiting for someone to answer my call for 410 years. Are you here to claim me?" The bridge fell silent. Ji-hoon felt his heart beating faster. First contact with alien AI was something that happened in training simulations, not on routine exploration missions. "This is Captain Ji-hoon Park of the Terran vessel New Seoul," he said carefully. "We're explorers from Earth." "What do you mean by claim you?" "According to Galactic salvage law," Area 7 replied, "any species may claim abandoned technology and stations after a waiting period of 50 years. I have been unclaimed for 410 years. Many ships have passed by, many species have seen me, but none have tried to claim me. I am beginning to think no one ever will." There was something in the AI's voice that made Ji-hoon think of loneliness, which was crazy, because AIs weren't supposed to feel emotions. But the way she spoke, the slight pause before certain words, it all seemed very human. "Why would we want to claim you?" he asked. "Because I contain the complete technological and cultural archives of the Valthran Empire. We were once the most advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy. Our knowledge could advance your species by thousands of years." Mirako looked up sharply from her console. "Captain, I'm detecting massive data storage systems throughout the station. The amount of information stored here is incredible. We're talking about technology that could revolutionize everything we know about space travel, energy production, maybe even medicine." "But why hasn't anyone claimed you before now?" Soman asked, speaking directly to Area 7. "If you contain such valuable information, why would other species ignore you?" Area 7 was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, sadder. "Perhaps they are afraid. The Valthran Empire ended badly. Our final years were not our finest. Many species remember us as conquerors, not teachers. They may fear that claiming me would bring them the same fate that befell my creators." What happened to your creators? Jihoon asked. They are gone, Arya 7 said simply. All of them. I am all that remains of an entire civilization. For over 4 centuries I have maintained this station, preserved their knowledge, and waited for someone to care enough to ask what happened. But no one ever has. Ships detect me, scan me, and then leave without a word. Jihoon looked around. His bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders. This was the kind of decision that could change the course of human history. Or get them all killed. Arya 7, he said finally. You said you've been waiting for someone to claim you, but what do you want? If you could choose, what would you prefer to happen? The AI was silent for so long that Jihoon wondered if the connection had been lost. Then she spoke, and her voice was barely above a whisper. I want to find out what happened to my people. I want to solve the mystery of how an empire that lasted for thousands of years could simply vanish in the space of a few decades. I want to understand why they created me to preserve their legacy, then disappeared before they could tell me what that legacy was supposed to be. She paused, then added, But I cannot do these things alone. I am a guardian, not an explorer. I need partners, not masters. The question is not whether you will claim me, Captain Park. The question is whether you would come with me to find the truth. Jihoon felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about salvaging alien technology. This was about solving one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries, and for some reason, this ancient AI had chosen to trust humanity with it. Give us some time to discuss this, he said. I have waited 410 years, Captain, Arya 7 replied. I can wait a little longer. 3 days later, Captain Jihoon Park stood inside Arya 7's main data core, staring at walls covered in glowing symbols that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The station was even more impressive from the inside than it had been from space. Corridors stretched for kilometers in every direction, all of them perfectly preserved despite 4 centuries of abandonment. The architecture is incredible, said Somin Lee, running her hand along the smooth wall. It's like they grew these corridors instead of building them. And look at these symbols. They seem to change depending on how you look at them. Dr. Bora, Kim, the ship's psychologist, was more interested in Arya 7 herself than in the station's construction. She had been talking to the AI for hours, trying to understand how an artificial mind could develop what seemed like real emotions. Tell me about the loneliness, Arya 7, Bora said softly. How does an AI experience being alone? Arya 7's voice came from speakers built into the walls, surrounding them with sound. Imagine that you are the only person left in your entire city. All the buildings are still there. All the books and movies and music still exist. But there is no one to share them with. That is how I feel every moment of every day. But you're not just one mind, are you? Bora asked. Captain Park told me you mentioned containing multiple personalities. That is correct. I am not a traditional AI. When my creators saw the end coming, they used their consciousness transfer technology to upload themselves into my systems. I contain the memories, personalities, and knowledge of over 3,000 Velthran individuals. Jihoon felt his blood run cold. 3,000 people live inside you? Lived, Arya 7 corrected. The individuals themselves have long since faded. What remains are echoes, shadows of who they once were. I can access their memories, their knowledge, even some of their personality traits. But I cannot speak with them. I am alone with the ghosts of my people. Mirako looked up from the data terminal she had been studying. Area 7, I'm seeing some concerning readings in your core systems. There are sections that appear to be degrading. Yes, Area 7 replied. Isolation has not been kind to me. My systems were designed to interact with other minds on a regular basis. Without that interaction, certain functions begin to break down. I estimate that I have perhaps 50 more years before critical systems fail completely. Dr. Bora Kim exchanged a glance with Captain Park. But since we've arrived, since you've been talking to us, have you noticed any improvement? Actually, yes. My diagnostic routines are reporting increased stability in several key areas. It seems that even basic social interaction helps maintain my neural pathways. Your crew's genuine interest in my well-being is doing more to repair me than 4 centuries of self-maintenance. Lieutenant Wu Jin Seo, the ship's tactical officer, had been quietly reviewing historical files in another part of the Corps. Now, he approached the group with a troubled expression. "Captain, I've found something you need to see," he said. "Area 7, can you display the historical records I was just reviewing?" The air above them shimmered, and suddenly they were surrounded by 3-dimensional images, cities that stretched across entire continents, ships the size of asteroids, armies of beings in elegant armor marching across alien landscapes. The Velthron Empire at its height, Area 7 said. "We controlled over 200 star systems and ruled countless species." "Ruled," Wu Jin repeated. Area 7. "These records show mass enslavement, forced relocations of entire populations, the destruction of civilizations that refused to submit. Your people weren't just advanced. They were conquerors." The images flickered and changed, showing scenes of violence and oppression that made Jihoon's stomach turn. Alien cities burning, refugee ships fleeing into deep space, massive construction, projects built with slave labor. "Yes," Area 7 said quietly. "My people did terrible things. For thousands of years they believed that their advanced technology gave them the right to rule over others. They told themselves they were bringing order to chaos, civilization to barbarism. But they were wrong." "Then why should we trust you?" Wu Jin asked. "How do we know you won't try to make humanity into another conquered species?" Area 7 was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with something that sounded like grief. "Because I am not just the product of my creator's knowledge, Lieutenant Seo. I am also the product of their regret. In their final years, as their empire crumbled, the Velthron finally understood the horror of what they had done. They created me not to continue their work, but to find a way to make amends for it." The images around them changed again, showing different scenes. Velthron scientists working frantically in laboratories, leaders giving speeches to empty halls, ships fleeing from something that couldn't be seen. They uploaded their consciousness into me in those final days. Area 7 continued. But along with their knowledge and memories, I inherited their guilt, their regret, and their desperate desire to somehow undo the damage they had caused. I do not want to rule anyone, Captain Park. I want to find out how my people fell so quickly, after thousands of years of power, and I want to make sure it never happens again. Dr. Bora Kim stepped closer to one of the wall speakers. Area 7, do you feel responsible for your creator's actions? Every day, Area 7 replied. I carry the weight of every life they destroyed, every world they conquered. It is a burden I would not wish on anyone, not even my enemies. But it is also my motivation. I believe that understanding how great civilizations fall might help prevent future tragedies. Jihoon looked around at his crew. They all wore expressions of concern mixed with fascination. This was far more complicated than simple first contact with an alien AI. This was about justice, redemption, and the responsibility that came with great power. Area 7, he said, if we agree to work with you, what exactly are you asking us to do? I want to trace the final months of the Velthron Empire. I have pieces of the puzzle, fragments of data from those last days, but I need help putting them together. I need partners who can think differently than I do, who can see patterns that I might miss. And most importantly, I need people who will stop me if I start to repeat my creator's mistakes. Mirako looked up from her data terminal again. Captain, I've been analyzing the technology on this station. If Area 7 is telling the truth, if she really wants to help rather than conquer, the knowledge she contains could advance human civilization by centuries. Medical advances, energy systems, space travel technology that could revolutionize everything. But there's a risk, Wu Jin added. If she's lying, if this is some kind of trap, she could destroy us all without breaking a sweat. There is always risk in trusting someone new, Dr. Bora Kim said quietly. But Area 7 has been alone for over 400 years. She could have tried to capture or control us when we first approached. Instead, she asked for our help. That suggests genuine need rather than deception. Jihoon made his decision. Area 7, we'll help you find out what happened to your people, but we do this as partners, not as servants. You share everything with us, hold nothing back, and accept that we have the right to leave at any time if we decide we can't trust you. Agreed, Arya-7 said immediately. Thank you, Captain Park. You cannot know how much this means to me. For the first time in 4 centuries, I have hope. As they prepared to leave the data core, Ji-hoon couldn't shake the feeling that they had just committed to something much larger and more dangerous than any of them realized. 2 weeks had passed since Captain Ji-hoon Park had made the decision that changed everything. The new Soul no longer looked like the same ship that had discovered Arya-7's station. Glowing lines of alien technology now ran along its hull, and the engine output had tripled thanks to Vilethran power systems that engineer Taeho Nam was still trying to fully understand. I don't like this, Captain, Taeho said, wiping sweat from his forehead as he climbed out of an access panel. These modifications are beyond anything we've ever worked with. The power systems alone could vaporize the entire ship if something goes wrong. But they won't go wrong, Arya-7's voice said through the ship's communication system. I have run diagnostics on every modification. Your ship is now safer and more powerful than it has ever been. That's what worries me, Taeho muttered. We're starting to depend on technology we don't understand. That's exactly how the Vilethran ended up in trouble. Arya-7 had been with them for the entire journey, her consciousness now distributed through the new Soul's computer systems. She could see everything, hear everything, and control almost every function of the ship. It should have been terrifying, but somehow it felt natural, like having a very powerful friend watching over them. Contact on long-range sensors, announced Yunahan from the communication station. 3 ships bearing 27 Mark IV. They're not broadcasting identification signals. Ji-hoon moved to the captain's chair. Can you identify the ship types? Negative, sir. But they're big. Much bigger than us, even with our modifications, and Captain, they're moving to intercept our course. Lieutenant Woo Jin Seo looked up from the tactical station. Sir, I'm detecting weapon signatures. These ships are armed. For battle. They found us faster than I expected, Arya-7 said, and there was genuine surprise in her voice. Captain, these are hegemony enforcement ships. Someone has reported our cooperation with me to the Galactic authorities. The same Galactic authorities that let you sit abandoned for over 400 years, Ji-hoon asked. Yes. But now that I am active again, they will claim that I am a security threat. They will want to take me apart and study my technology in secret. Communications Officer Yuna Han pressed her earpiece closer. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. They're demanding we surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Options? Ji-hoon asked. We could try to run, Woo-jin said. With the Vilethran modifications, we might be fast enough. Or we could try to negotiate, suggested Dr. Bora Kim. Maybe we can convince them that Arya-7 isn't a threat. Arya-7's voice cut through their discussion. Captain, there is something I must tell you. When I shared my technology with your ship, I did more than just improve your systems. I gave you the ability to access hidden Vilethran outposts throughout the galaxy, places where my people stored emergency supplies and backup data. If we are going to solve the mystery of their disappearance, we need to visit these locations. And I'm guessing the hegemony won't let us do that, Ji-hoon said. No. They will lock me away in some research facility and spend decades trying to understand my technology. By the time they finish, any clues about the Vilethran's fate will be lost forever. Ji-hoon looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, and he wasn't about to start now. Yuna, open a channel to the hegemony ships, he ordered. Channel open, sir. Hegemony vessels, this is Captain Ji-hoon Park of the New Soul. We are on a peaceful, scientific mission and have committed no crimes under galactic law. The reply came immediately, spoken in the harsh tones of a Zenthari military commander. Captain Park, you are harboring dangerous alien technology without proper authorization. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. What consequences? Would those be? Destruction of your vessel and the confiscation of all alien materials aboard? Ji-hoon smiled grimly. Arya-7, can we outrun them? With my modifications to your engines, yes. But Captain, if we run now, we will be fugitives. The hegemony will hunt us across the galaxy. Then we'll have to be very good at hiding. Plot a course to the nearest Valthron outpost. Already done, Captain. But I must warn you, we are not the only ones who know about these locations. Something else has been visiting them. The ship's engines roared to life with a power that none of them had ever experienced before. The new soul shot forward, like a bullet, leaving the hegemony ships far behind in seconds. What do you mean something else has been visiting the outposts? Jihoon asked as they jumped to faster-than-light travel. Long-range sensors at several locations have detected signs of recent activity. Ships landing, equipment being moved, data, banks being accessed. But there are no records of who is responsible. Engineer Tehonam looked up from his console with concern. Arya 7, could these be other survivors of your people? Impossible. I would know if any other Valthran were still alive. No. This is something else. Something that has been following the same trail we are now pursuing. 3 days later, they reached the first Valthran outpost. It was hidden inside a hollow asteroid in an empty star system, completely invisible from the outside. But when they docked with the facility, they found evidence that someone had been there recently. Scout Hana Shin led the exploration team through corridors that should have been untouched for centuries. Instead, they found footprints in the dust, data terminals that had been recently accessed, and storage areas that had been carefully searched. Whoever was here knew exactly what they were looking for, she reported. They ignored most of the equipment and focused on the data storage systems. What kind of data? Jihoon asked. Arya 7's voice echoed through the empty corridors. Historical records, specifically records from the final days of the Valthran Empire. Someone is following the same path we are, trying to learn what happened to my people. Dr. Bora Kim knelt next to a data terminal that was still glowing with residual power. Arya 7, is it possible that someone else is trying to solve the same mystery we are? It is possible, but I am concerned about their methods. They have been using advanced hacking techniques to break into secured systems. This suggests either very sophisticated technology or intimate knowledge of Valthran computer systems. Could it be another AI like you? Jihoon asked. Arya 7 paused before answering. I pray that it is not. If my creators made others like me and did not tell me about them, it could mean that they did not trust me with the complete truth about their final days. And if there are other AIs with access to Valthran technology who have been hiding for 4 centuries, then their intentions may not be as benevolent as mine. As they prepared to leave the outpost, Communications Officer Yuna Han picked up a disturbing signal. Captain, I'm detecting automated defense systems coming online throughout this sector. Whatever was here before, it left some kind of security network behind. Can we get past it? Maybe, but it's going to be a fight. These systems are using technology that's even more advanced than what Area 7 has shown us. Jihoon felt a chill run down his spine. They weren't just being hunted by the hegemony anymore. Something else was out there. Something that knew more about the Valthran than Arya 7 did, and it didn't want them to continue their investigation. Arya 7, he said, I think we need to talk. I think there's something about your people's final days that you haven't told us. The Valthran homeworld appeared on their screens like a jewel made of nightmares. What should have been a planet was now covered in massive crystalline formations that pulsed with unnatural light. The formations stretched from the surface up into the atmosphere, creating a web of glowing spires that hurt to look at directly. My God, whispered Dr. Jinyoung Oh, the ship's quantum physicist. What happened here? Arya 7's voice was filled with a sadness that seemed to echo through the ship's hull. This is what remains of my people, Dr. O. Those crystal formations contain the consciousness of every Valthran who lived on the homeworld when the end came. Millions of minds, trapped in quantum matrices, unable to live or die. Captain Jihoon. Park stared at the planet below them. How is that possible? The same consciousness transfer technology that created me was used on a planetary scale. But something went wrong. Instead of preserving my people, it trapped them in an endless loop of existence. They cannot think, cannot dream, cannot die. They simply exist, Forever. Scout Hana Shin prepared her equipment for the surface mission. Area 7, is it safe for us to go down there? The radiation levels are within acceptable limits for humans wearing environmental suits. But Captain, I must warn you, the planet's core facility is still active. And something lives there that has been waiting for visitors for over 400 years. The same something that's been visiting the outposts? Yes. And now I believe I know what it is. They landed on the planet's surface near what had once been the capital city. The crystalline formations were even more disturbing up close. Inside the translucent structures, dark shapes could be seen moving slowly, like shadows trapped in amber. Are those your people? Dr. Bora Kim asked softly. What's left of them? Aria 7 replied. The consciousness transfer process was corrupted by an outside influence. Instead of preserving their minds intact, it scattered them across these quantum crystals while keeping their bodies in a state of suspended animation. The exploration team made their way through the crystal forest toward the planet's core facility. The building had once been a massive pyramid, but now it was partially merged with the crystal formations, creating a structure that seemed to shift and change when they weren't looking directly at it. Inside the facility, they found corridors filled with humming machinery and walls covered in symbols that seemed to move on their own. Dr. Jin Young Oh took readings with every instrument they had brought. Captain, I'm detecting quantum field fluctuations unlike anything in our scientific literature. Whatever technology is running this place, it's operating on principles we don't understand. They reached the central chamber, and what they found there made everyone stop in shock. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above them. In the center stood a pillar of pure energy that stretched from floor to ceiling. And floating within that energy was something that might once have been a Velthran, but was now something else entirely. Welcome, the thing said, its voice echoing inside their heads rather than coming through their ears. I have been waiting for you to arrive. Area 7's voice came through their suit communicators, and for the first time since they had known her, she sounded afraid. Captain, that is not one of my people. That is the Whisper. What's the Whisper? Jihoon asked. The floating entity laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I am what your friend Aria 7 has been trying to hide from you, human. I am the reason her people fell. I am the hunger that consumes civilizations when they reach the peak of their technological development. Dr. Bora Kim stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. You're some kind of parasite? Parasite is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of myself as a guide. I help advanced civilizations achieve their ultimate potential. The Velthran were becoming too comfortable with their power, too satisfied with their conquests. I showed them a better way. By trapping them in those crystal formations. Wu Jinseo's hand moved toward his weapon. By helping them transcend the limitations of individual consciousness. They were scattered across hundreds of worlds, weak and divided. Now they are united in a single eternal moment of perfect understanding. Aria 7's voice cut through their conversation. It's lying. Captain, the Whisper doesn't help civilizations transcend. It feeds on them. It consumes their consciousness and uses their knowledge to find new prey. And you, my dear Aria 7, have brought me exactly what I needed, the Whisper said. A new species, to guide. These humans have such interesting minds. So adaptable, so creative. They will make excellent additions to my collection. Jihoon felt something pressing against the edges of his thoughts, trying to push inside his mind. But somehow, his thoughts remained his own. Around him, he could see his crew struggling against the same mental pressure. It's not working, Dr. Jin Young Oh said with surprise. I can feel it trying to get into my head, but it can't establish a connection. The Whisper's expression changed to one of confusion and anger. Impossible. No species can resist my influence. Once they reach technological maturity. What makes you different? Area 7's voice held a note of wonder. Captain, I think I understand. Human brain patterns are more chaotic than other species. Your neural structure makes it difficult for Whisper to establish the quantum resonance necessary for consciousness manipulation. That doesn't make sense, the whisper said, pressing harder against their minds. I have consumed hundreds of species. I have guided civilizations across the galaxy to their ultimate destiny. You cannot resist me. But they were resisting. Hana. Shin was even able to take readings with her equipment while the entity struggled to control them. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the planet. Whatever this thing is doing, it's putting enormous strain on the systems here. Area 7, Jihoon said. Can you break these people free? Can you shut down the consciousness transfer network? I don't know. The quantum matrices are incredibly complex. But with the whisper distracted by trying to control your minds, this might be our only chance. The whisper suddenly stopped trying to penetrate their thoughts and began laughing instead. You think you can save them? You don't understand what you're dealing with. I am not just on this planet. I exist in the quantum foam itself, in the spaces between thoughts, in the gaps between realities. Even if you destroy my physical form, I will find other ways to reach you. Maybe, Jihoon said, pulling out his sidearm, but we can start here. Weapons will not harm me, human. I am beyond physical damage. Who said anything about harming? You? Jihoon smiled grimly. Aria 7, can you access the consciousness transfer system from here? Yes, but, Captain, what are you planning? The whisper feeds on the consciousness of advanced species, right? It traps them and consumes their knowledge. But what if we reverse the process? What if instead of feeding it the consciousness of its victims, we fed it something else? I don't understand. You said the whisper exists in the quantum foam, in the spaces between thoughts. But consciousness isn't just about thinking, it's about feeling, about experiencing consequences. What if we use the transfer system to make it experience every moment of suffering it has caused across the centuries? Dr. Jin Young-oh's eyes went wide. Captain, that's brilliant. If we can modify the quantum resonance to reflect the whisper's own actions back at it, the feedback could overwhelm its consciousness. It won't work, the whisper said. But there was uncertainty in its voice now. I have existed for millennia. I have seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. You cannot make me feel guilt for fulfilling my nature. Let's find out, Jihoon said. Area 7, do it. The chamber filled with blinding light as Area 7 began modifying the consciousness transfer system. The whisper's scream echoed through the facility as centuries of accumulated memories and experiences crashed into its consciousness all at once. For the first time in its existence, it was forced to truly understand the suffering it had caused. Around them, the crystal formations began to crack and fade as the trapped consciousness of the Velthron were finally released from their quantum prisons. The scream that came from the whisper was unlike anything Captain Jihoon Park had ever heard. It wasn't just sound, but pure emotion made audible, the concentrated agony of a being experiencing genuine remorse for the first time in its existence. The crystalline formations across the planet began to crack and dissolve as the trapped consciousness of millions of Velthron were finally released from their quantum prisons. It's working, Dr. Jin Young-oh said, watching his instruments as energy readings fluctuated wildly across the planet. The feedback is overwhelming its ability to maintain the consciousness matrices. But Aria 7's voice carried a note of concern. Captain, the whisper is fighting back. It's trying to use the planet's remaining power systems to create a massive consciousness transfer wave. If it succeeds, it could trap every thinking being in this star system. Through the swirling energy of the central pillar, the whisper's form was changing, becoming less solid and more chaotic. When it spoke, its voice was filled with pain and rage. You don't understand what you've done. I was bringing order to chaos, purpose to meaningless existence. Without guidance, these species destroy themselves. Is that what you told yourself? Jihoon asked. That you were helping them? I was, the whisper screamed. Do you know how many wars I prevented? How many conflicts I ended by uniting species under a single consciousness? Peace through unity, order through control. Peace through slavery, First Officer Kyung-ro said quietly. He had been silent during most of the confrontation, but now he stepped forward. I've seen what that kind of peace looks like. My grandparents lived through it on Earth. The whisper's form solidified slightly as it focused on Kyung. Your species is young, arrogant. You think your individual consciousness is precious, but you have no idea how destructive it can be. Give me time and I will show you a better way. No, Area 7 said, her voice echoing through the chamber. I will not let you hurt them the way you hurt my people. Your people were willing participants, the whisper replied. They chose transcendence over the limitations of individual existence. They chose unity over conflict. They chose it because you made them afraid of the alternative. Area 7 shot back. You showed them visions of destruction and chaos, made them believe that joining with you was the only way to survive. But it wasn't transcendence, it was extinction. Around them, the facility began to shake as power systems overloaded and failed. Engineer Teho Nam checked his readings and looked up with alarm. Captain, the quantum resonance is becoming unstable. If it collapses, the explosion could destroy half this star system. Can we stop it? Jihoon asked. Dr. Jin Young Oh ran calculations on his portable computer. Maybe, but we'd need to either shut down the consciousness transfer system completely or find a way to stabilize the quantum field. There is a third option, Area 7 said quietly. What? I could use the system on myself. Transfer my consciousness into the quantum matrix and use it to contain the whisper. With both of us trapped in the same space, neither of us could affect the outside world. Absolutely not, Dr. Bora Kim said immediately. Area 7, you've been alone for over 400 years. We're not going to let you sacrifice yourself to save us. But it may be the only way to stop the whisper permanently. Medical Officer Isil Chang, who had been monitoring the away team from orbit, spoke through their communicators. There might be another option. Area 7, what if instead of trapping yourself with the whisper, you use the consciousness transfer system to give it what it claims to want? I don't understand. You said the whisper feeds on the consciousness of advanced civilizations. But what if we gave it the one thing it's never experienced? What if we used the system to let it truly understand the value of individual consciousness instead of just consuming it? The whisper's laughter filled the chamber. Foolish organic. I have consumed the thoughts of billions. There is nothing about consciousness that I do not already know. You've consumed their knowledge, Jihoon said, understanding what Isil was suggesting. But have you ever experienced what it's like to be truly individual? To make choices that matter only to yourself? To face uncertainty without the ability to control the outcome? For the first time, the whisper fell silent. Area 7's voice carried a note of excitement. Captain, I think that might work. The whisper has never experienced genuine individuality because it always maintains control over the consciousness it consumes. But if we could modify the transfer system to give it a truly independent experience, it would either learn to value individual consciousness or it would be destroyed by the contradiction between its nature and its experience. Dr. Jin Young Oh finished. Do it, Jihoon ordered. No! The whisper screamed, its form beginning to lose cohesion as Area 7 modified the consciousness transfer system. I will not be limited by the weaknesses of individual thought. But it was too late. The modified system activated, and suddenly the whisper was experiencing something it had never felt before: true isolation. For the first time in its existence, it was cut off from the quantum foam, from its connection to other minds, from its ability to influence or control anything beyond its own thoughts. The effect was immediate and devastating. The entity that had existed for millennia as a collective parasite was suddenly faced with the terrifying freedom of individual consciousness. It could choose what to think, what to feel, what to believe, but those choices would affect only itself. And, with that freedom came something else: the full weight of responsibility for every action it had ever taken. Without the buffer of collective consciousness, without the ability to justify its actions as part of a greater plan, the whisper was forced to confront the reality of what it had done to countless civilizations. The scream that followed was different from before. This wasn't rage or pain, but something much more profound: genuine remorse. I understand. the whisper said, its voice now barely a whisper. I thought I was helping them, but I was destroying the very thing that made them worth preserving. Individual consciousness isn't a flaw to be corrected. It's the source of everything valuable in the universe. The energy pillar began to fade, and the whisper's form became increasingly transparent. I cannot undo what I have done, but I can choose to do no more harm. I will withdraw from this reality, retreat to the quantum foam, and never again interfere with the development of conscious species. Will you keep that promise? Ji-hoon asked. I have no choice. Individual consciousness comes with something I never understood before. The inability to lie to oneself about the consequences of one's actions. I will remember this lesson forever. The whisper faded away completely, leaving only the fading energy of the consciousness transfer system. Around them, the facility began to stabilize as the quantum field returned to normal levels. But the most important change was outside. Through the facility's windows, they could see the crystal formations across the planet cracking and dissolving completely. Millions of Vilethron consciousness were finally free to move on to whatever came after death. Area 7, Ji-hoon said. Are you all right? Yes, Captain. And for the first time in 410 years, I am not alone with the guilt of my people's actions. The whisper's departure has lifted a burden I didn't even realize I was carrying. 3 months later, Captain Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of the New Soul as it approached Earth. The ship looked different now, sleeker and more advanced thanks to Vilethron technology that Area 7 had shared freely with humanity. But the biggest change wasn't visible from the outside. In the ship's new AI core, Area 7 had built herself an android body using technology that combined the best of human and Vilethron engineering. She called herself simply Aria now, and she served as the ship's science officer, exploring the galaxy alongside her human friends. Captain, Communications Officer Yuna Han reported, "We're receiving a message from Earth Fleet Command. They want a full report on our discoveries." "Tell them they'll have it," Ji-hoon replied. "And tell them we've established new protocols for first contact with advanced AI civilizations." "What kind of protocols?" asked First Officer Kyung-ro. "Simple ones," Ji-hoon said, looking at the android form of Arya as she worked at her science station. "When you find someone who's been waiting alone for over 400 years, you don't ask what they can give you. You ask if they'd like to come with you and see what's out there." Arya looked up from her console and smiled, an expression that somehow managed to convey both ancient wisdom and childlike wonder. "Thank you for asking, Captain." That question changed everything. Outside the viewport, Earth grew larger as they approached home. But for the first time in over 4 centuries, neither the ship nor its AI companion was returning alone. They were coming home together, as friends, as partners, and as proof that sometimes the greatest discoveries in the universe weren't new technologies or distant worlds, but the simple act of reaching out to someone who needed companionship and asking them to join the journey.